Speaking of the difficulties in the sadhana and the physical body, Mother points out that down the ages there have been seekers who have done the yoga of realization of the higher consciousness at the level of the mind, at the level of the emotions, at the level of the self, but of efforts towards the divinization of the body, we have very little evidence. And those of us who try seriously to reach this sadhana to the physical body find the same difficulties which nature in its long period of gestation and evolution has had to face. From its state of utter inconscience, nature had to wait till the speck of consciousness appeared on the surface. That consciousness had to spread, organize itself. In the process, it was subjected to the pulls of the basic inconscience, and it appeared that all the effort was lost. After a number of such attempts, when consciousness went beyond the belt of being completely pulled down, evolution of consciousness in an overt sense commenced. All these difficulties one has to face. The body, for one who seeks to know it, cultivate it, make it conscious and change, presents the appearance of a virgin forest. Everything one has to find out for himself and exert himself towards change bit by bit. One is always subjected to the downward pressure from the nether regions, which are more firmly established, the habits of the inconscient, and one finds that all that one has built up is lost in a day. The same process has to be repeated. You finish your work in one part, the other part does not show any sign of having been worked upon. The whole process has to be repeated. There is thus a continuous appearance of repeating the same thing all over again. But this is only an appearance. There is always a forward movement and an upward movement. We look as if we are coming back to the same point, but there is a difference in altitudes, in degrees. All the same, one requires an endless patience. There are hundreds of parts in our body which have to be individually tackled, and the challenge they pose is something formidable. But that's certainly no reason why we should not make the attempt, because the divine manifestation in the terrestrial universe cannot be complete till the last cell in the physical body has been changed and transformed. The cells that are unconscious have been charged with illumined consciousness, and each cell participates in the divine manifestation. It is a long endeavor, but collectively or individually, that has got to be worked out by one who would participate intelligently and consciously in the divine endeavor. The next question is of faith and effort. Whether faith is something that exists and acts independent of individual effort, or is it something that is built up by human effort? Broadly, Mother points out that faith is something that comes by itself. It is like an opening of a door on the reality to which our physical senses don't bear witness. Faith springs up. Faith forms itself in response to our aspiration, maybe some need in the being of which we ourselves may not be fully conscious, as a gift of grace. But faith is not something that is reasoned out. As Sri Aurobindo has pointed out elsewhere, a faith that is argued out and established by reason is no faith at all. It is a conclusion. Faith is something there, active. It is the soul's witness to a truth of which our outer mind has no cognizance. Our mind, our outer perception does not testify to its presence. But the soul has got a glimpse of the truth. The soul has the conviction of the possibility and the certainty of realizing this truth in this life. That is why there is a persistent conviction that the reality is there, that the divine is there, and it is possible to act. This broadly is this feature of faith, that it is self-existent, doesn't depend upon our mind, our reasoning faculties. But once faith is there, thereafter comes in the role of human effort. We have to cherish that faith, guard it, because this faith is always exposed on all sides to impacts, contacts and influences from all kinds of forces and quarters in the universe, in the world. The forces, the elements that are opposed to the truth, to the divine, are always on the lookout to create circumstances and situations to endanger this faith. And it is the duty of the seeker, who has the privilege of having the faith awakened in him, established in him, to safeguard that faith. He has to protect it. And one of the most dangerous elements from which faith is to be guarded is doubt. In the beginning, we do not realize the dangerous potentiality of doubts. It may be that the doubt steals into our atmosphere from others. We may not take it seriously. Those around us, maybe our friends, maybe acquaintances, They may talk in joke, questioning our faith. They may argue as if to show us how our faith is impractical, how it has no basis. And they will also tell us, this is just for argument's sake. Don't take that seriously. Even such talk of letting doubt come in the atmosphere.
Just now it stopped.
The sense of this doubt, in whatever form, even as light banter or as a serious poser, is like poison. Mother had to issue a number of warnings to sadhaks, especially during the Second World War, warning them against the yogic dangers of doubt. He said, don't play with you cannot play with impunity with doubt. Doubt is a poison that corrodes. There are people who, as an exercise of their intelligence, they argue, they will put one proposition, the divine exists. Countering that, they would pose the other proposition that the divine does not exist, argue out the cases, ostensibly to rise above and then come to a position which is above the human standpoints. But in the very process, these vibrations steal into the being, into one's nature, and they start undermining the faith. So whether in sport or otherwise, it is dangerous to allow doubting Thomases in our company, read literature which casts doubt, which makes fun, because though at the moment when we read it or listen to these things, we are impervious, we do not care to the vibrations of doubt, still they steal into our being and lodge themselves in our subconscious. And in moments of depression, moments of frustration, from which no sadhak is exempt, these doubts raise their head. These, what Sri Aurobindo called somewhere, the troglodytes of the nether mind. They raise their head and start creating havoc. So human faith comes without human effort, but once it is there, human effort has to be exerted to protect it, to guard it, and envelop it with love and concern. Then mother is asked, what is the role of religion in society? Discussing this question, mother points out that collective religion is a brake upon collective egoism. Religion, insofar as it teaches men to accept the existence of a higher power, of God, the practicability and the necessity of establishing a relation with God, conducting ourselves in conformity with what we believe to be the will of God, controls and checks the wild impulses of the animal in man. It is a stage, of course, but it is a necessary stage. She makes a point that the consciousness in the collectivity, in the society, is always lower than the consciousness of the individuals constituting it. You would have marked, if you have observed, that individuals by themselves who have a fairly well cultivated consciousness, when they are in a mass, in a crowd, the whole consciousness sinks down and it can be acted upon by any one powerful person who can exercise his influence, maybe through oratory, maybe through will, maybe through his force of personality. The very same individuals who are outside the crowd, they will react differently. But there, they respond to the collective suggestion. And it is to safeguard this danger of the collectivity going wild that religion has been treasured and cultivated as a necessary educative factor in the growth of society. Even in the case of individuals, why do men stick to religion? Because they need a sense of security. In the world, things are always in a flux. What is today is not there tomorrow. Riches pass, change hands. Those whom we love, today they die tomorrow. But men want something to stick to, something to hold to in this changing life. They want a sense of security, a post of security to which they can hold. And that is provided by religion. You may call it God, you may call it higher power, you may call it anything. But the fact remains that this sense of security, a basic need in humanity, in society, that is played upon by powerful groups in religion, in politics. In politics, of course, in the politics of the present day, the political groups, they create conditions. First, they will create conditions of anarchy, of disorder, in which people will feel abandoned and look for support. And then the very same groups in other forms will come to provide the necessary basis of the security. In religion, the groups recognize, the establishment as they call it, they recognize this need in each person, much more when the people are together in collectivity, in families, in clans, and they make of religion a convenient tool for exercise of their dominance over the rest of the people. That is as far as the role of religion in society is concerned. Individually, for each person, religion means different things. Though the general name of religion is there, is the same. Each one understands religion differently, uses it differently, and lives it in a different way. It is only when man is prepared to enter into the spiritual realm that religion ceases to have relevance to him. But on that account, he cannot condemn religion. He may disagree. He may himself live certain institutionalized aspects of religion as having no more relevance to him. But he cannot question the need of religion for the general society. Religion has played a great role and can still play a role till spirituality pervades the universe as a force, even as religion has been able to do for the past so many centuries. Then comes the question of intuition. Now, is intuition something that is totally new? And what is intuition? Intuition, as you all are aware, is a sudden knowledge which is infallible, a knowledge which is there, which comes to us without our making an effort for it. One does not have to work it out, one does not have to argue, work out like mathematical problems, but it is simply there and it is the right solution, the right knowledge. Sri Aurobindo describes it in the Life Divine as an edge of the ray of knowledge. There is a truth, there is a light of knowledge, and a ray escapes, and when it comes into us, we get the right knowledge. We have not labored for it. It is not a product of our intelligence. So this has been there. The phenomenon of intuition has been there always. Only it is not organized in the human consciousness. It is not established and accessible to all, just as reasoning of the intelligence, logical mind is possible for everybody. But there are a number of intuitions. There is what we call instinct. An instinct is something which we subconsciously feel. This is to be done, this is not to be done. We don't think of it. Something warns us, something tells us from within, no, this is not to be done. Even in an animal, they instinctively desist from certain steps. There is that raised intuition that warns them. And that intuition at that level is called instinct. Even in men, human beings who are not developed, this instinctual form of intuition is active. We do not talk of that. But in the life of each one, on several occasions, one becomes aware that in this area, in the region of the solar plexus, behind all emotions, there is a kind of feeling. When we are to do something which should not be done, that warms. There is an uneasy feeling. Or when a thing is to be done, there is a feeling, yes, this must be done. It is not in the form of an idea, not in the form of a thought, but in the form, if at all we will give a name, a form of feeling. Now this is a kind of intuitive feeling, an intuitive guidance. This must be respected, this must be cultivated. That is one. If that is the play of intuition, as far as, no, it's all right, she will Mr. Its working in this area is concerned. But there are those whose minds are active. And for them, intuition can be active in the mind, on the mental summits. How to become conscious is the reasoning and the thought activity of the mind is slowly brought under control, quietened. The consciousness of the mind, that part of our mental consciousness which is active, is raised as much as possible to the top of our head or above it, and we hold ourselves in tranquil silence. When the restless activity of the mind is brought under control and a silence is imposed upon it, then there is a sudden, what mother calls something like a drop of light. Immediately there is a flash. We know it is not ours, but in our receptive condition we receive it from that. That is the intuition which has landed in the mind. But we shall not concentrate. The only condition for the play of intuition in the mind is we shall not concentrate. If we concentrate, we tense up the muscles, mental muscles. And that is the exact reverse of what should be done for the play or invitation to intuition. As I said, we have to lift the mind above the head and keep silent. The moment this intuitive guidance is there, whether in the mind or in the heart area, we should not rush into action. That is, we interfere with the action of the intuition. We have to wait and see if there has been any kind of interference, any kind of dilution, mixture with the knowledge or the direction given by intuition. Very often it happens that our mind itself works rapidly and throws up something which has the appearance of intuition. It is nothing else than a fast thinking, fast thought. Also, some subconscious desires, subconscious wish to act in a particular way, which we have rejected at the conscious level of our mind. That surreptitiously enters into the situation and pretends to be intuition. So there are so many stages, so many possibilities of our own mind and vital posing to be intimations from intuition. So one can, in our present state of consciousness, which is far from being purified, which has still allegiance at different points to nature in ignorance, we cannot be too careful. But true intuition, when it comes, it has an overwhelming sense of certainty about it, and there is peace. When it is attended by a certain excitement or a thrill, be sure that something else has diluted with it. Pure intuition, when it comes, and it has had opportunity to have pure action, there is a peace about it. Yes, a conviction that this is the only thing to be done. It is a question of trial and error before we develop the faculty of distinguishing between undiluted intuition and mixed intuition. Allied to this question of intuition is the question of inner guidance. Whether it is by yogic development or by grace, if we are fortunate to receive an inner guidance whenever we seek for it, there is one condition for the guidance to be constant, and that is there should be a conscious surrender. There should be no questioning of that guidance. There should be no hesitation in accepting that guidance, but a constant attitude of surrender. When you have surrendered centrally and you are trying to surrender every moment in your active life to the divine, the inner guidance you can depend upon it. Even if you do certain mistakes in the interpretation of that guidance, your very sincerity in surrender and depending upon that guidance will save. Circumstances will so develop that you are guarded from the consequences of your errors. But indispensable condition is a conscious surrender maintained constantly. A resolution of surrender once in the morning is not enough. It has to be affirmed on each occasion. First it has to be done consciously, thereafter it becomes natural. There should always be a part which is concentrated in this attitude of surrender. After so many serious items comes a lighter and perhaps a topic which gives for a more relaxed discussion, and that is someone asks mother about automatic writing, planchettes, how far they are reliable. Mother says that automatic writing, planchette sessions, they are not at all reliable. They are more or less forums for our own subconscious ideas. In the first place, she says, it is not true that we contact those who have gone, the loved ones, as they say, from whom we seek for guidance and advice, information. At times, she points out that those who have derived comfort from us, those who have depended upon us, those who love us, have loved us, when they depart from the body, their being, for some time at least, tends to find shelter in our atmosphere. At that time, we should hold ourselves in a state of quiet, love and prayer. If at that time we allow ourselves to be overcome by grief, sadness, we are creating difficulties for the very soul for whom we are lamenting. So it is necessary, at least for those who are spiritually awakened, to hold themselves in peace and let the departed stay in one's atmosphere in a sense of being protected by our love. At such times, to resort to automatic writing, planchette sessions, consulting the mediums, it disturbs them. Even granting that you can contact, it is a disturbance to them. Luckily, Mother says, most of these never reach the departed. Usually, it is the ideas in those who are seated or in oneself that find expression and come into the automatic writing. Or what happens more often, that we are all surrounded in the subtle atmosphere by a number of vital entities. These entities are shapes taken by disgruntled feelings, disappointed desires, unfulfilled wishes, or the remnants of disintegrated vitals of those who have already gone. All those are floating in the atmosphere, and they decide to enjoy themselves. They like to mislead people, and when you ask questions, if they do not know, they tap your subconscious and get to know the knowledge of which you are not conscious, and they dish it out. So on all accounts, this is false, it is dangerous, and Mother observes humorously how number of people have been writing to her about their contact, communion with Sri Aurobindo, how they have resorted to automatic writings, consulted the planchettes, Sri Aurobindo has guided, and I myself have seen so many sheets purporting to be directions from Sri Aurobindo. And one only feels pity and sorry for people who are misguided for such communications. Even 3 days ago, I had a trunk telephone call from Central India. A person, I do not know him, he wrote to me, he says, and it is true, I think I have a vague recollection of a letter, in which he says he is in touch with Mother, and Mother has guided him to do this and that, but now he loses his consciousness, and he does not know what to do, how further he can contribute to Mother's work and all that. I didn't reply. He sent a telegram. I didn't reply. So yesterday there was a loud call, and he said, I wrote to you so many things and I am in difficulty, and why have you not answered? He says, I am in the subtle body, Mother is visible to me. Mother speaks to me, and I am guided by her. I am possessed by her. And what happens when I sit for meditation, I lose my consciousness. So it has become difficult to live the normal life. There is no question of my coming to the ashram, because Mother has said I don't have to go anywhere. I am all right where I am, because she is there with me. Now, to a man who has arrived at this obsession, what can you do? Thing is, it is not just a question of his being under a delusion. It is not a self-delusion. The fact that when he sits for meditation or prayer, he loses his consciousness, shows that a dark force is at work. It loosens his control over himself. And that is the time when it works upon him. It has created a delusion. So these experiments create certain delusions. Then Mother relates from her own life, from her own knowledge, how in France there was a millionaire who was always playing for high stakes in this Monte Carlo, and who was also, when the club was not open. During those seasons, he used to stay in South France and would operate on the stock exchange. And there was a particular spirit that would guide him. And he made millions. He never made a mistake, because that would always tell him what exactly to do, what exactly to gamble upon. And he used to boast openly how he could defeat anyone. And he was a despair. He broke banks, and everybody was mortally afraid of him. And at the zenith of his career, mother says, one day the spirit told him, stake all that he had got. He did it in the roulette table, and he lost. Again it told them, there is something left there in the stock exchange, gainings in the banks. Stake that. He was so habituated over years in listening to it and obeying it instantly that he staked the rest of the earnings. That also was lost. At the end, what was he to do? He has lost everything. Said, shoot yourself. He immediately obeyed. He took a pistol and shot himself. Now this is typical of how these spirits enjoy themselves at the cost of man. In the beginning they create faith. They link themselves by giving people what they want. And when they completely surrender themselves, their judgment, their will, their souls to them, then they drive him to ruin, and then they laugh. There are accounts in some of the theosophical books how they laugh uproariously when people are ruined by their misguidance. So this is not a thing that should be touched, that should not fascinate us. Then some of the children asked, what about yogic sadhana? Sri Aurobindo wrote that book in automatic writing. Mother says he was a fully conscious. He knew that a particular being wanted to express certain knowledge, and he lent his hand. He clearly saw, after the whole thing was over, the figure of Ram Mohan Roy receding from that scene. And it never took place on the vital plane. It was from the beginning to the end, the mental plane. And he was it was under full control. Obviously he may have had certain curiosity, and he wanted to oblige. He did it. Afterwards he refused to accept the authorship. And then he even made that joke, whatever the publishers persist in the lying blurb, I am not the author of Yogic Sadhana and I refuse to accept responsibility. These pastimes, like planchettes, sitting with mediums, they are normally resorted to, Mother points out, by those who need some excitement, whose consciousness is inert. They need to be prodded, they need such experiences to awake to orders of existence which are not just physical. They want to prod themselves. Normally they may take to things like novels. Those people with a tamasic mind, who are not prepared to go into the life, experience things and all that, they want that amusement, that titillation, that stimulation from novels, romances, and such things which alert their mind. They get that joy, they get that excitement. This is under the same category. A particular type of people who are perhaps a little more cowardly than the others, they may resort to novels. The others may resort to automatic writing and such excitements. But some scientists, for instance, they may play at it. Mother cites an instance how she used to know one of the top scientists, man very well informed, highly cultured, and he would deliberately attend these seances when mediums would call those spirits, and at one such session, he says, one spirit appeared, and as the spirit had a robe, and that robe, at that time there was no plastic, of the time mother speaks, it must be in the last years of the last century, or perhaps early first decade of the present century. That spirit had worn a robe from top to toe, and that robe was not in our kind of cloth. It was an unwoven cloth, like she says today what we call plastic. At that time there was no plastic. And as the spirit walked by his side, this man, whom mother describes as a brute, he tore away a small piece, and that spirit howled and disappeared. It wouldn't come thereafter. And he brought it to show to mother that this is the thing. Because that proved to him, which he couldn't deny, that there is a different order. Now that stimulated him. And mother says she saw it, handled it, and gave it back to him, that piece. So these are there, and people who need to be convinced, if they would grow by that knowledge, it is a different matter. But normally, these are not things which should occupy our attention or time. And then she makes a remark that all proofs, whatever proofs you give, will not convince a person whose being is not ready to experience the other orders of existence. It may form a kind of a mental information, but personally it will not influence him to make a change in his life. So only when the being is ready, one can benefit by a knowledge of the existence of the different worlds, different planes, the interchange and the interaction, and not by these artificial means. In other words, do yoga, develop your consciousness, develop the range of your faculties, and then these things come to you naturally.
Talking with one for the body, another for the unconscious, like the ocean, and so forth.
The parallels between the present effort towards the transformation of the body and the earlier attempts towards cultivation of the body with a view to its prolongation of life. The parallels are very superficial. It is just possible that the imagery of the virgin forest may be common. But we have to note that the earlier attempts were largely to acquire a certain immortality in the body, the elixir of life they wanted to get. They set about in various ways, metals, transforming the metals, bringing into existence a kind of stuff that would amount to what they call the nectar of immortality and so on. There was no attempt at a divinization of consciousness for the manifestation of the divine. There was an attempt at individual immortalization. Here, immortality is only an incidental consequence. Nobody is attempting or is expected to attempt this perfection of the body in order to be immortal, in order not to die. It is to transform the cells so as to divinize them, fill them with the divine consciousness. One of the results of this transformation would be conquest over death. One cannot disintegrate, one cannot die. But the fact that this whole area has not been systematically tapped before, if it has been tapped, it is in certain partial areas and at certain superficial levels. And there they have found this thick crust of inconscience, a stubborn and a dour resistance to all attempts to change them. That may have evoked the imagery of the inconscient ocean or virgin forest. But there is a radical difference between the past attempts, the aim of the past attempts, the process of the past attempts, and the present attempt, which is more in line with the evolution of nature. It is a more scientific and more in conformity with the intention of nature. Just as it has elevated the mental consciousness and to a certain extent transformed it from one level to another. Similarly, at the physical level, nature is today aiming at spiritualizing first and then divinizing the basis of matter, physical matter. That has a larger scope, a larger canvas, and a broader goal.
If one is working on the matter of a given body and then he dies before it's brought to any completion, how is the effect?
The soul concerned, if a person dies in the midst of his work of transforming his body, if he dies in the middle, what happens? That is the question. Speaking in answer to such a question, similar question, Lord Krishna has said in the Gita that not a single step in such an endeavor is lost. Every step is a gain, and that gain is preserved. So, in this case, when that soul, whose effort has been interrupted, when it comes again to birth, when it takes another embodiment, it will start from that point. It will have a body which has arrived at that stage. He will continue from where he has stopped. He won't have to start once again with a body like ours. But the precise point where he has stopped, from there he will resume. Whether it is a mental effort, mental progress, or psychological progress, or physical progress. Provided that effort has been organized around the soul, around the psychic being. The guardian angels, they will reconstitute that matter around the soul and enable it to continue. books which are said to be inspired by Tibetan lamas, they can be safely dismissed as occult fiction. There is a certain background of occult happenings. But the way they are presented, the fascinating manner in which things are worked out, that is not true. So it is certain spirits that want to misguide the mind of humanity, that want to misguide the world of seekers, that not only create this kind of literature, but flood these quarters with plentiful material resources to publicize that literature. I won't name. There are certain foundations which are specialized only in this kind of literature. Dangerous, retrogressive, and misleading. But overall, there will be certain phrases, certain things which anybody will be fascinated with. But when you start going into it, you are imbibing falsehood and dangerous falsehood, misguidance. Some certain movements which would have become world movements and led humanity far and far, their progress was stunted because of this intrusion from the vital planes. Tibet, it is full of, it is a dead nation. Whatever occult knowledge was there, it has been encrusted with lot of superstition and wrong formations. So on the whole, the level is low. It is not spiritual. It diverts the attention. Supposing you die in the middle, will that person have to start from ABC once over? No. He will have to start from where he has left. That is the law of evolution.
So his body will not be completely absorbed by nature?
That may be, it may be burnt. But he will be given by the cosmic agencies a substance which has been brought up to that. Because once one person in this world attains a certain stage, it means in principle that stage is assured for all who make that attempt. Just as if you solve one mathematical problem, anybody else can solve it also afterwards. So once one does it, in principle matter has attained that level of change. And it is possible for the gods, you may call, or the angels, to reconstitute matter at that level and give it.
From his birth It means the parents have already very high consciousness.
No. Parents, that is not. There has nothing to do with the parents. The same parents have a brilliant son, they have an idiot son. Isn't it? How does it come about? These things are not decided by heredity. Heredity relates only to the most superficial aspect of the things. It is the soul's evolution, and what the soul has brought, that decides.